Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of you for your service. And in that vein, by the way, we just had Navy Week in New Orleans associated with commemoration of the War of 1812. And I got to meet a number of service members. They happened to all be Navy. But I tell you what, we have a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, but it is not the young people in the military. So thanks for your leadership and thanks for them. I have some questions focused on some concerns I have with the cuts and proposals as it affects Louisiana. And let me put it in context. Look, these are very tough budget times. There are going to be a lot of decisions that are not popular to different states, and we all get that. I think what frustrates me and some other members, concerns us, is two things for me. Number one, in a lot of these cases, we are not given, and we do not see, even after digging, a clear metric and a clear justification and rationale. And number two, in a lot of cases, I see jointness going out the window at a time when greater jointness, including greater efficiency, is more necessary than ever. In some of these decisions, I personally see sort of the stovepipes hunkering down and sacrificing jointness and through it greater efficiency. So that's the context of some of these concerns and questions. Specifically, the Air Force, so I'll ask you, Mr. Secretary, the Air Force is recommending to cut out the 917th Fighter Group at Barksdale, the A-10s there. Now, when we looked into that, when we asked the folks on the ground in Louisiana, including the Army folks at Fort Polk, who they helped train, we found out those folks on the ground said that about 70% of all of the Joint Air Force Army training at Joint Readiness Training Center, Fort Polk, used that 917th Fighter Group during the Green Flag East exercises. So there was tremendous appreciation of that participation in that joint training. When we asked the Air Force this, I just got a letter from the Secretary, and his response was that the same 917th group, quote, has only fulfilled its requirement, meaning that training, once over the last 3 fiscal years, close quote. Now, I mean, this isn't, a 10% difference of opinion. This is different planets. And so it's very concerning to me when you get wildly different statistics and numbers behind a decision. How am I to reconcile those wildly different statistics?
Well, Senator, us certainly will reconcile the numbers for you. If you're getting, we'll go back and validate, and we'll certainly get back to you on that. I'll say a couple things. One is on the decision to retire, the A-10s. That was based on, our force planners' assessment of what, what the future demand was going to look like, what was the range of scenarios that the Department of the Air Force would have to support the joint warfight in, and what was the overall capacity of multi-role of aircraft that were needed for that. A decision was made to take down more A-10s and F-16s because the F-16 is a multi-role aircraft versus the A-10, which is more single purpose. So that was the overall, the decision to take down that was the approach to take down the capacity. In terms of where the specific units were and the distribution among the Guard and Reserve, it was similar to what I talked about. The thought was similar to what I mentioned before, that in order to maintain the overseas presence and to maintain the proper sort of acceptable level of operational tempo across our force, to do more of those reductions in the National Guard and Reserve. So that was the overall thought process there. And sir, I would just like to highlight that if there is a unit at JRTC, any other that is going in the box, ready to go deploy, and the Air Force will, whether it's the 917th or an A-10 unit from Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, that is a valid requirement. And in the same way that the Air Force plugs in with its service counterparts downrange. It will do so here in order to make sure that our comrades are ready to go and that we can train like we fight every day. So that's something we'll be working through. But sir, I do want to make sure we're providing you all the information that you need.
Certainly, I'd like that follow-up and
Yes, sir.
reconciliation. More broadly, we've asked for specific savings numbers and analysis for that, as well as Louisiana National Guard 259th Air Traffic Control Squadron from DOD. The only thing we've gotten are conclusory statements or sort of the decision or a letter with a paragraph explanation. We've constantly, many times over, asked for a specific cost savings assessment, if you could get that to us more broadly. On the 9/17th, if it's true that they have participated in a big number, a majority, folks on the ground say 7% of that training at Fort Polk, what will be the replacement for that type of training?
Yeah, please. Sure.
Senator, I think it's important that when they talk about what will be the replacement, not that they ask for what specific aircraft, but what capability. And that's where we were stuck with the tough decision to have to eliminate single capability aircraft to go with multi-role aircraft, so we could bring in something that could do more than just one thing. And so what would be providing them as a multi-role aircraft that could perform the same function the A-10 was performing. And sir, if I could just go back and comment on one thing you said earlier about jointness. The question of services hunkering down and trying to back away from jointness, I really don't agree with that. I'd have to tell you that having served at U.S. European Command when I was a younger officer, having been the J-1 at U.S. Central Command during much of the conflict when General Abizaid was a commander, we are all so bought into jointness that it would be impossible for us as a department to walk away from how we fight now. We fight as a joint integrated team. Our leadership teams are integrated. Our relationships across the services have been solidified, and that's the only way we'll be going to war in the future.
Okay, well, to follow up that thought, regarding this A-10 decision, let me ask your Army colleagues, when in the process was the Army consulted regarding the impact of this A-10 decision? How early or late, and who was consulted about that on the Army side?
I frankly can't respond to that. I'll have to take that for the record and find out. I assume it would be within our G3 staff on our training and operational concerns.
Senator, we'll go back and find out, but I would agree with my Air Force colleague. We'll never walk away from jointness, and any opportunity that we have to train is going to be a good opportunity for the country. So just like we cannot walk away from the reserve component, we cannot walk away from jointness, and the combined nature of how we fight is the only way that we can do this.
Well, if y'all could follow up, because I think it would be an interesting test of this debate to see when in time and at what level the Army was actively, in a meaningful way, consulted on this decision.
Senator, could I just say that during the development of our budgets, each service's plan is vetted through the other services and, of course, through our Office of Secretary of Defense overseers. So there are sort of smaller forms and larger forms. We have our programmers, all the force management, the plans and programs, call them the eights. They regularly review the budget submissions towards the tail end once each service is developed, and then our budgets go through something called the Defense Management Action Group, the DMAG, and that's where the services can look before it's submitted to Congress, before it goes to the OMB. Every service gets to peer into what each other service is doing. So we also, there's lots of communications back and forth talking about where we highlight some of the big issues that are going to be coming forward in the year ahead.
Okay, well, I'll look for that follow-up, and I appreciate it. And Secretary Ginsburg, again, on the Air Force side, Global Strike Command is a relatively new command at Barksdale.
Senator Vitter, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we're on a 7-minute clock and a vote's been called, and I know Senator Brown wants to ask a question. You could submit that question for the record.
Thank you, Mr.
As can anyone else in the subcommittee before close of business tomorrow night.
Thank you.